I've read of Eirik surviving through blizzards that swallowed whole armies, through forests where trolls stalked the shadows, and into the blood halls of Uppsala where kings wept. I thought I knew his limits, the edges of his courage. But today, we plunge into the one story he only ever whispered, the one that broke something inside him. This isn't just about surviving the sea. This is about sailing into the living, breathing body of a god. This is Eirik's true encounter with Jörmungandr, the World Serpent. And what he saw will haunt your waking nightmares. The mouth that unsealed along a ridge nearly the length of their ship was not merely wide, it was a chasm, a rupture in the very fabric of the world, a void that swallowed light and hope alike, a gateway to utter cessation in the unmaking of all things. It was a maw of cosmic scale, vast beyond mortal comprehension. Not a wet, fleshy maw as one might expect from a sea beast, not a creature of familiar biology, but a revelation of endless, jagged teeth, each one a monument of black, polished bone, stretching into an abyss that defied all dimensions. They curved inward, slick and dark, like ancient obsidian blades honed by the turning of eons, designed not for tearing, but for the absorption of entire realities, for the slow, inexorable drawing in of all matter and energy, of all consciousness, until nothing but its own vastness remained. The ship, so recently a vessel of strength and pride, a testament to human endeavor against the wild, untamed sea, was now a mere splinter, a discarded toy, caught in the shadow of something incomprehensible, dwarfed by its impossible scale, rendered utterly insignificant. The air, already thick with an unnatural stillness that deadened sound and stifled breath, a silence that pressed in on their very souls, grew heavy with a cold, metallic tang that burned the back of Eirik's throat, making his very blood feel like brine, like liquid ice in his veins, chilling him from within. It was the scent of abyssal depths, of things that had never known the sun, things that thrived in the lightless void beneath the very foundations of existence, of a cold so profound it seeped into the very marrow of his bones, chilling his blood with a primordial dread that went beyond fear, touching upon the existential terror of absolute annihilation, of the unmaking of his very soul. Sigvard whimpered, a raw animal sound that was quickly swallowed by the profound silence, choked off by the oppressive void, as if the air itself absorbed despair, and clawed at his eyes, as if to unsee the impossible vision, to tear the sight from his mind, to purge the memory before it could take root and consume him whole. The last remaining oarsmen, pale and unmoving, their faces slack with terror, muscles frozen, stared straight ahead, their eyes wide and unblinking, already lost to madness, their minds shattered by the sheer, unholy scale of the revelation. Their vacant expressions, fixed and unblinking, were more terrifying than any scream, for they bespoke a complete and utter surrender of self, a complete shattering of their inner world, a quiet, internal apocalypse that had already run its course within them. Runi, his screams long since withered to whimpers, his consciousness already fractured by pain and terror, was spared this final, waking nightmare, a small mercy in the face of oblivion, a temporary reprieve from a truth too vast to bear. Though his broken leg still twitched as if trying to flee from the very air, from the oppressive weight of what was happening above, from the unutterable horror permeating the timbers, seeping into every crevice of the ship. The mouth did not snap shut. It merely remained open, vast and patient, a silent invitation to nothingness, a gaping maw that encompassed entire horizons, stretching beyond mortal sight, defying the very curvature of the world, defying the laws of physics. It was not hunger, Eirik understood with a chilling clarity that seemed to bypass his conscious thought, bypassing his terror, but an invitation to cease, to merge, to become part of the greater being, to be unmade and rewoven into its incomprehensible form, to have his very essence dissolved into its cosmic substance, a return to the primordial soup from which all life emerged, a final, irreversible merging. A slow, inexorable pull began, not a current of water but a draw of monumental scale that transcended the sea's physics, a gravitational force not of mass but of cosmic presence, drawing them steadily inward, deeper into the abyssal void, into a vortex of non-being, into the impossible core of its existence. The Havkaldr groaned, its timbers shrieking in protest, not against waves, but against the very geometry of the world being subtly, horribly warped around it, bending to the will of the colossal entity. Its planks screaming like tortured souls caught in a divine press, each creak a final, desperate lament. The ship was not sinking. It was being drawn into a deeper reality, a truth that defied navigation or fight. A reality where human understanding, human endeavor, even human existence was a fragile, discarded thing, utterly irrelevant in the face of such ancient cosmic power, a brief, meaningless flicker in the vast, cold expanse. The greenish glow that had emanated from below intensified, bathing the hull in a sickly, pulsating luminescence, making the ancient wood seem translucent as if its very substance was dissolving. Its sturdy frame weakening under the alien light, becoming porous and ephemeral. Eirik could see the scale patterns on the surface of the sea more clearly now. Intricate, ancient designs that pulsed with a faint inner light, like veins of liquid emerald beneath a dark skin, or the glowing script of a forgotten language of cosmic dread. They were not mere skin, they were symbols etched by an artist whose canvas was the cosmos, designs that seemed to shift and reconfigure as he watched, hinting at geometries impossible to conceive, alien patterns that spoke of infinite, terrifying mathematical precision, patterns that seemed to alter his own perception of space and time, twisting the very air around him, making his vision swim and his mind reel. He felt his mind stretching, tearing at the edges, trying to comprehend the infinite expanse of the being beneath them, a vastness that dwarfed every concept he had ever held, every mountain, every ocean, every star, reducing them to mere specks. It was a serpent, yes, but not like any serpent of Midgard, not a creature of flesh and blood as mortals understood it, not even a dragon from the sagas, those exaggerated tales of earthly monsters. This was the serpent of the world, Jörmungandr, a creature whose body was the very ocean, whose movements were the turning of the spheres, a cosmic leviathan that coiled around reality itself, a being of myth made manifest, terrifying and utterly indifferent to the fleeting lives of men, to their hopes, their fears, their very existence. Its presence was a suffocating weight on the soul, a profound sense of insignificance that threatened to crush him utterly, to grind him into nothingness, to erase him from all memory. A low, resonant hum began to vibrate through the ship, rising from the depth of the open maw. It was not a sound of communication, not a call or a warning, but of raw, indifferent power, the sound of unimaginable mass shifting, of ancient grinding forces that had shaped the universe before the gods walked, before time itself began, before anything was. It bypassed the ears and vibrated directly in the bones, rattling Eirik's teeth, shaking his very skeleton, a deep bass note that threatened to loosen the very foundation of his being, to shake him apart from the inside, piece by piece, dissolving his physical form into its component dust. He could feel his own blood singing in his veins, a discordant note against the serpent's ancient song, a lullaby of cosmic oblivion, a song that had echoed since before the stars were named, a sound that unmade thought, that silenced the very voice of his mind, reducing his inner world to a blank, screaming void, devoid of all meaning. Suddenly, a massive scaled ridge, larger than any mountain they had ever seen, began to rise from the depths directly in front of the Havkaldr's prow. It moved with an impossible slowness, carving the mist like a solid wall, a colossal, unyielding peak of living, armored flesh, shimmering with that same sickly green light, a living mountain rising from the void, stretching upwards forever into the infinite nothingness. It was the head, Eirik knew, though it stretched so far into the unseen fog that he could not discern its full outline, its true monstrous form lost in the endless white, a shape that dissolved into the very ether, too vast for his eyes to encompass, too complex for his mind to process, too alien to comprehend. What he could see were the eyes. They were not typical eyes. They were vast, glowing orbs, the size of great lakes, the same unholy green as the light beneath the ship, each one a swirling vortex of ancient light and cosmic dust, a liquid chaos contained within an impossible form. They held no malice, no anger, no judgment, for such emotions were alien to their vast existence, meaningless concepts to such an entity, like the buzzing of a fly. They held only an infinite, terrifying indifference. An ancient alien gaze that had witnessed the birth and death of stars, the rise and fall of worlds, the cycling of aeons, the very unraveling of creation, moments that dwarfed all human history into a single forgotten breath. When one of these colossal eyes slowly, imperceptibly turned towards the Havkaldr, Eirik felt his soul shrivel within him, retracting into the smallest, most defenseless part of his being, a tiny flicker of defiance against an impossible truth. It was the gaze of a god, but a god that did not see men, only disturbances on its surface, insignificant motes on its vast, living hide, a momentary irritation quickly forgotten, like dust motes on a window pane, brushed away by a cosmic breeze. It was the stare of an entity for whom time and space were mere ripples on its scales, for whom human life was less than a fleeting thought, less than dust, less than nothing at all, a meaningless tremor. The ship continued its slow descent into the chasm of the mouth, the air growing colder, thicker, pressing in on them with a physical weight, a suffocating presence that stole the breath from their lungs, making them gasp for air that offered no sustenance, no life. The sound of groaning wood intensified, not just from the Havkaldr, but from within Eirik himself, a deep, resonant ache that mirrored the ship's own demise. The feeling of his own bones grinding, his joints threatening to give way under the unseen pressure, his very flesh feeling stretched and torn. He felt as if his very atoms were being pulled apart, stretched thin by the immensity of the serpent, a sensation of being unmade, molecule by molecule, his physical form dissolving into the raw materials of the universe, a return to the primordial, chaotic soup from which he had sprung, a return to absolute non-existence. His mind, however, held. Perhaps it was his Norse stubbornness, a resilience born of generations facing impossible odds, of carving life from harsh lands and defying frost giants and blizzards. Or perhaps the serpent, in its unimaginable scale, simply didn't perceive his individual resistance as a threat, a fleeting itch on its vast form that would soon be subsumed and forgotten without a moment's notice. He was a persistent character, indeed. He wouldn't simply vanish without a struggle, not without a desperate final attempt to defy the impossible, to spit in the face of oblivion. Sigvard, who had been muttering incoherently to himself for hours, his voice a low, continuous drone of half-formed prayers and forgotten sagas, his eyes unfocused and vacant, fixed on nothing but inner terror, suddenly screamed. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated terror, a sound that ripped through the oppressive silence, a sound that begged for an answer, for an end, for mercy, and it was abruptly cut short, swallowed by the profound silence of the serpent's presence, as if the very air itself had consumed it, leaving no echo, no trace, no memory behind, as if he had never existed at all. Eirik saw, or rather felt, the sudden absence of the man beside him. There was no splash, no struggle, no sound of impact, no final gasp, no thrashing. Just the cold, final realization that Sigvard had been consumed, not by teeth, but by the sheer, unmaking vacuum of the serpent's presence. An ontological collapse where his existence simply ceased, absorbed without trace, his very memory fading from the air as if he had never been. A horrifying example of cosmic indifference. The ship was dissolving, its form becoming one with the being that enveloped it, its very existence being reabsorbed into the boundless whole. Its purpose ended, its journey concluding in cosmic annihilation, a silent, unspeakable doom. Eirik was truly alone now, a solitary figure adrift in an alien internal landscape, the last sentient witness to this cosmic horror. He felt the deck buckle beneath him, the wolf-head prow, his companion through so much, his silent confidant, finally shattering and sliding into the green abyss, its last defiant posture dissolving into nothingness, swallowed by the impossible void. Yet, in that ultimate moment of despair, as everything he knew crumbled, as reality itself seemed to tear apart around him, a flicker of something ancient and primal ignited within him. His ancestors had faced monsters and gods, battled giants and trolls, faced down the elements and the wild beasts of the north, but never one that was the world itself, a true cosmic horror that defied all known understanding, all sagas, all prophecies, all the boundaries of mortal thought. He was a son of Odin, a warrior from a land of ice and stone, a descendant of those who dared to defy fate, to spit in the eye of doom, to rage against the inevitable. And though he could not fight this, he could witness it. He could endure. His mind, though battered and stretched to its limits, though screaming internally, refused to break. A stubborn knot of humanity in a sea of alien indifference, a singular point of resistance against the boundless, consuming terror. The pressure intensified, becoming an unbearable weight on his entire being, a crushing force that threatened to flatten him into a two-dimensional smear, to reduce him to a shadow of himself, to press him out of existence. The Havkaldr was now fully within the serpent's maw, though it felt less like a mouth and more like an alternate dimension, a pocket reality contained within the gargantuan being, a space where mortal physics twisted and fractured, where light bent and sound dissolved into a meaningless hum, where reason itself unraveled. The green light was blinding now, a sickly, oppressive luminescence that burned the eyes and melted shadows, turning everything into a swirling, verdant hell, a kaleidoscope of nausea that threatened to bring him to his knees, to strip him of all will. The pervasive hum threatened to crack Eirik's skull, to shatter his very consciousness, to reduce his thoughts to static, to obliterate his very sense of self, leaving only a vacant shell, a husk of a man. He knew, with a certainty that transcended fear, a cold, immutable fact written in the very fibers of his soul, that the end was near. This was not a battle to be won, not a monster to be slain, not a journey to be completed, but a truth to be endured, a final terrifying communion with the impossible, a forced understanding of his own infinitesimal place in the universe, a silent acceptance of oblivion, of being less than a thought, less than a memory, less than nothing. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the world convulsed. It was not a violent shake, not an aggressive movement of anger or malice from the beast, but an internal tremor of unimaginable power, a ripple through the fabric of existence itself, as if the very loom of destiny had shuddered, as if the cosmic threads themselves had twitched. A sound ripped through the depths, not the serpent's hum, but something else, something primal and vast, a deep, resonant thrum that seemed to come from the heart of the cosmos itself, a sound that vibrated with the turning of the nine worlds, with the shifting of primal forces that shaped reality, a sound that was both ancient and utterly new, a frequency that shredded the fabric of sanity, a symphony of the universe's true, terrifying nature. The colossal eye, still fixed on him with its abyssal indifference, seemed to waver, its focus momentarily drawn, its vastness briefly disturbed, a fleeting expression of cosmic concern, of a force beyond even its comprehension. For a fleeting instant, Eirik saw a hint of something behind it, something even larger, a shadow within the shadow, a movement of forces beyond even Jörmungandr's own domain, a deeper cosmic truth asserting itself, a glimpse of the greater, unimaginable machinery of the universe, a brief, terrifying insight into the true, boundless chaos of creation, the very core of all that was. Perhaps it was the distant, echoing roar of Thor's challenge, a thunderclap across the Iser's bridge, a sound that stirred even the World Serpent from its aeons-long contemplation, a reminder of the order that still held the chaos at bay, a faint echo of the impending Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Or perhaps it was the grinding of the roots of Yggdrasil as they shifted in the cosmic void, the tree of life itself responding to an unseen disturbance, a universe adjusting its immense, indifferent gears, a shift in the cosmic balance, a momentary disruption of the endless coil that bound the world. This was the cosmic dance, the eternal rhythm of creation and destruction. And Jörmungandr, vast as it was but a player in it, a part of a drama of unthinkable scale, a pawn in a game beyond mortal comprehension, a mere segment of a truly infinite design, a living manifestation of a fraction of the boundless. Whatever it was, it caused Jörmungandr to react. The immense mouth, which had been drawing the Havkaldr inward with slow, deliberate precision, now rippled. Not closing, not a movement of consumption, but a shift, a slight, almost imperceptible tremor along its inner ridges, a momentary spasm of colossal muscle, like a vast, living valley flexing, causing unseen currents to shift within its immense form. The immense pressure on the ship momentarily lessened, a breath taken, or perhaps released, by the World Serpent, a cosmic sigh that vibrated through Eirik's very being, a momentary release of its overwhelming presence, a brief loosening of its grip, a fraction of a second of less intensity. The current that had been drawing them in faltered, becoming a subtle eddy, a swirling pocket of less resistance, a small, unpredictable swirl in the vastness of its interior. Eirik did not hesitate. His mind, honed by years of quick thinking in battle and storm, sharpened by survival against impossible odds, seized upon this infinitesimal window, this momentary reprieve, this breath of unexpected opportunity, this one chance. He moved with the instinct of a hunted animal, a Viking forged in the fires of survival, a man who had faced death too many times to simply lie down and accept it, whose will to live was an unyielding flame. He did not run towards safety, for there was none to be found in this alien realm, no escape in any direction a mortal mind could conceive, no sanctuary to be reached, no haven in this abyss. Instead, he plunged down. Not into the serpent's gullet, which was the obvious path to oblivion, the gaping void of complete absorption, but sideways, following the line of the now fractured hull, a jagged fissure in the ship's side that seemed to open into a less direct path, a crack in the consuming darkness, a hidden passage that no one would ever conceive of. He slid along the slimy, impossible surface of one of Jörmungandr's inner teeth, a vast, smooth mountain of bone, its surface slick with the same green luminescence, its curves seemingly endless, a landscape of living terror. It was a madness born of desperation, a direct dive into the maw of the World Serpent, a suicidal gamble, but it was also a desperate gamble on the sheer scale of the creature, on its immense, incomprehensible anatomy. He was so infinitesimally small, a speck, a single motile organism against a boundless titan. Perhaps, in its momentary cosmic distraction, in its own vast internal movements, he could slip through the cracks, a forgotten piece of grit in a vast, unknowable mechanism that paid him no mind, too preoccupied with forces beyond even itself to notice his desperate plight, his minuscule, frantic movements. He slid down the tooth, the sickly green light illuminating its vastness, feeling the grit of ancient calcium against his hands, like scaling a mountain of polished bone, slick with an unidentifiable, ethereal slime that clung to his skin, burning it with a cold fire, a constant, nagging sensation of being consumed, of his very substance being eroded. The humming intensified, the secondary tremor still echoing through the impossible space, vibrating through the very air, through the bones of the ship, through his own skull, threatening to burst it open, to liquefy his brain, to shatter his very consciousness. He reached the bottom of the tooth, a vast, flat expanse of bone-like material that stretched away into the glowing mist, into the horrifying unknown, a landscape of living terror and impossible geometry. And then, without conscious thought, propelled by an animalistic will to live, by the sheer unyielding demand of his Norse blood, he pushed himself off, launching himself into the swirling, thickening green fluid that was Jörmungandr's saliva. It was not water. It was viscous, cold, and strangely sweet. Yet it burned his skin with an almost electrical current, an alien sensation unlike anything he had ever known, as if his very cells were reacting to its unnatural composition, trying to reject it, to shed the alien presence, but failing. He plunged deeper, the luminescence overwhelming, momentarily disorienting him, robbing him of all sense of up or down, of orientation in this unnatural medium, where gravity seemed to shift at will, where direction was meaningless. He felt himself being carried, not by a current, but by the internal flow of the serpent's own vast internal movements, shunted along by its unimaginable physiology, a forgotten speck within a living world, a piece of detritus in a cosmic bloodstream. He was inside the World Serpent, being shunted, displaced, a mote in its cosmic digestive tract, utterly at its mercy, yet still, miraculously existing, still fighting for the last thread of his life, for the smallest chance of a breath of true air, for the faintest glimpse of the sky, for the return of sanity. He closed his eyes, fighting the urge to scream, to give in to the cosmic terror that threatened to consume his sanity, to shatter his very being into dust, to make him one with the infinite void, to erase his very memory from existence. He fought against the visions that flickered behind his eyelids, of impossible stars, of landscapes that folded in on themselves, of an endless, coiling darkness, of a universe unmaking itself, of realities bleeding into one another, of all meaning dissolving. He thought of home, of the cold fjords, of the familiar, predictable world where the sun rose and set and men knew their place, where the gods, though fearsome, were still comprehensible, their domains defined, their myths understood. He thought of the taste of mead, the scent of a wood fire, the laughter of his kin, the feel of his axe in his hand, the solidity of earth beneath his boots, the warmth of human touch, the simple comforts that defined his existence, the anchors to his humanity. He clung to these mundane anchors, these tiny fragments of his own reality, as the monstrous, silent power around him threatened to utterly unmake him, to dissolve his very essence into the primordial formless chaos from which it had sprung. He was a Viking, a son of men, and he would not break, not yet, not while a single spark of will, a single beat of his heart remained. Then, with a suddenness that stole his breath, the light lessened. The viscous fluid around him thinned, its burning sensation fading, and he felt a cold, familiar shock of true seawater, a profound relief after the alien embrace of the serpent's internal fluids, a shock that jolted him back to his own world, to his own reality, to the undeniable truth of a living, breathing ocean. He opened his eyes, gagging, spitting out the strange green fluid, its vile taste clinging to his tongue, the lingering essence of cosmic terror, a mark of where he had been, and found himself, impossibly on the surface. The fog was still thick, swirling around him like a shroud, clinging to his clothes and hair, a damp, cold embrace that felt strangely familiar, but the pulsing green light was gone. The unnatural stillness of the sea was replaced by the familiar, gentle lapping of waves against his body, a sound that, for the first time in days, was music to his ears. A symphony of normalcy, a sign that the world still existed as it should, that the laws of Midgard still held, however tenuously. He was floating alone amidst pieces of shattered wood, fragments of the Havkaldr, the last remnants of his doomed voyage, splintered and useless, dissolving slowly into the vastness, soon to be indistinguishable from driftwood, soon to be forgotten by all but him. He turned, straining his eyes through the mist, searching for any sign of the impossible beast, for the gargantuan coil that had been the sea itself, for the overwhelming presence that had swallowed his ship and crew. The Havkaldr was gone. The gaping mouth, the impossible eye, the churning green abyss, all gone, vanished as if they had never been, folded back into the cosmic tapestry, leaving no trace, no ripple on the water, no indication that such a horror had just been there. No evidence that his mind was not shattered. There was only the endless, gray expanse of the ocean and the damp, familiar embrace of the fog. A world returned to its mundane, terrifying silence, leaving him a lone witness to an unspeakable truth. He was adrift in a universe that had momentarily opened to him, then closed, leaving him with its terrifying secrets, a knowledge no man was meant to bear, a burden on his very soul that would never lift. The cold wind bit at his exposed skin, a comforting pain after the alien torment, a reminder of his own mortal existence, of the solidity of his own flesh and blood, of his continued impossible survival. Eirik swam. He swam for what felt like an eternity, for days and nights that blurred into an endless struggle, powered by a raw, unthinking will to survive, driven by the horrifying memory of the World Serpent coiling beneath the world, of its vast, indifferent eye, of the crushing weight of its cosmic presence. He swam until his muscles burned, until his lungs ached, until the very essence of his being screamed for rest, until every fiber of his being cried out for an end. But he could not stop. He swam until the sun, a true, warm sun, finally broke through the thinning fog, a beacon of hope in the gray expanse, a promise of warmth and life, revealing a distant coastline, a familiar rugged shore that promised the return of solid ground, a refuge from the impossible, a glimpse of the known world, a chance to simply be again, to live a normal life. He dragged himself onto the wet stones of the beach, collapsing, tasting the salt and grit of the mundane world, the feeling of solid earth beneath him a profound miracle, a bedrock of reality against the shifting chaos he had just endured. He lay there, gasping, every breath a painful triumph, the sounds of gulls crying above him a jarring return to normalcy, a world that seemed impossible after what he had witnessed, a world he was no longer truly a part of, forever changed, forever marked. He never spoke of what he saw, not truly. How could he? How could words capture the crushing reality of a creature whose body was the world, whose scales were continents, whose breath was the tide, whose thoughts were the turning of the cosmic wheel itself, whose very presence was the ocean? He told tales of sea beasts and storms, of valiant fights and grim losses, of madness and disappearance. Tales that were mere shadows of the truth, diluted and distorted to fit into human understanding. To be digestible for those who had not seen, for those who lived in blissful ignorance of the cosmic horrors that truly define their world. But the truth of Jörmungandr, the horror of its indifferent cosmic presence, remained locked behind his eyes, a secret shared only with the silent, unknowable depths, and with the persistent echo of that monstrous, ancient hum that still sometimes vibrated in his bones on cold, misty nights, a constant, chilling reminder that his escape was merely a reprieve, a stay of execution, not a true liberation. He was a survivor, yes, but forever altered, a man who had glimpsed the true face of the cosmic and knew that the world was far stranger and far more terrifying than any saga could ever describe, than any skald could sing. He became a wanderer, forever drawn to the sea, yet forever fearful of its depths, searching for answers he knew would never come, a silent prophet of a terrible truth, carrying the weight of the impossible within him. His hair turned white in a single night, his eyes held a distant, haunted look, forever gazing at horizons unseen by mortal men, and he preferred the company of the silent, vast wilderness to the chatter of men, for their words seemed thin and meaningless after the language of the cosmic. He knew what lay beneath the waves, and he knew it waited. He often found himself standing on high cliffs, staring out at the seemingly empty ocean, waiting for the sky to shift, for the pulses to begin again, for the world to breathe that monstrous breath. The taste of salt was forever bitter on his tongue, a reminder of the unholy fluid that had nearly claimed him, and the sound of distant thunder filled him with an ancient, bone-deep dread, for he knew it was not always from the clouds of Midgard. He carried the abyss within him, a silent, coiling terror that would never truly let him go. He was a living testament to the fact that not all stories have happy endings, and some truths are better left buried beneath the waves, for the sanity of mankind. If Eirik's harrowing journey across the World Serpent sent shivers down your spine and made you question the very ground beneath your feet, made you wonder what other unspeakable things coil beneath the mundane world, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another glimpse into the hidden horrors of the Norse world and the creatures that lurk just beyond mortal sight. And tell me, what do you think became of the Havkaldr and the men who remained aboard, swallowed by the cosmic maw of Jörmungandr? Do you believe Eirik was truly free, or did a part of Jörmungandr follow him ashore, etched into his very soul, a piece of the cosmic leviathan forever bound to him, a chilling echo that can never be silenced? Let me know in the comments below and share your own theories of the unimaginable depths. For sometimes, the most terrifying truths are the ones we can only whisper.